Hi, it's Mike Stevenson. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at managing Azure AI costs with Turbo 360. Now, in a previous video I did, we looked at how to manage the cost of an individual application that used AI with Turbo 360, but today we're going to look at a slightly different question, which is how do I manage my holistic view of my AI costs across the entire organization. And we're going to have many teams using different AI features to solve different problems in different applications. That's going to be very representative of most organizations at the minute. You'll have a lot of AI project work going on, but it's going to be really difficult to manage a horizontal view of those costs. So we're going to complement last week's video with this video looking at this horizontal challenge. Now, if we just ground the problem for a moment, so for many customers, the fastest growing line on your Azure bill is going to be the AI costs, with industry benchmarks indicating that around 40% of new Azure spend is typically around AI workloads. But the AI costs is the hardest part to govern, and the problem that people have least got their head around how to manage this in the real world. So this is what we're going to look at tackling today. Now, as I said, there's two ways to look at our Azure AI spend. So last week we looked at the vertical problem where we've got an application, we had things like web apps and databases and other stuff, as well as the Azure OpenAI costs within that. And we looked at how that team could look after their app. But today we're looking at a more platform view of the problem. So we're looking at this horizontal view down here, where we're saying, right, let's look at all of our AI costs across the company and see if we can sort of manage and monitor and optimize these costs. So we need this horizontal and we need this vertical view, and Turbo 360 is going to help you achieve both of these things, and you can run them side by side, and you can let teams self-manage their own app, but you can still have your FinOps team with that holistic view. Now, the problems that teams typically come and chat to me about are a couple of key ones. So firstly, allocating cost, figuring out which cost belongs to which application. We've got things like managing AI overspend. So how do we catch things going off the rails quickly and respond to that? And then also AI costs kind of seen in isolation. So how do we see AI costs part of the bigger picture of the company? So the first thing we're going to look at is how do we manage all of our AI cost across the company? So the first way we can do this in Turbo 360 is we have the tree view on the left of the product, and this is going to support us having one tree to look at both dimensions of this cost. So you'll see on the diagram here, I've highlighted the AI spend, or the Azure AI spend. So I'm able to create a node on that tree where it'll look at all of my subscriptions in Azure, and it'll pull out all of the AI costs, and we can just treat these as one node on the tree. However, further down on the tree at the bottom here, you'll see we've got those application focused views. So here we'd be able to look at the costs, not just the AI costs, but other costs as well. So everything that makes up each of the products. But when we want this vertical view, this horizontal view where we want all of our AI costs, regardless of product, we can look at that in the horizontal space. So this will give us a way, we can replicate this pattern for things like department views. The platform view would be across the entire company. Department view would be all of the AI, maybe in the HR department. And then we can go down to application and environment views if we need to as well. One of the interesting things about the tree view as well is there's quite a good security model on that tree. So we can sort of determine, only users in the Document 360 team could see their tree node, whereas in the FinOps team, we might give the main FinOps team a view across everything, or just across the horizontal services, and you can kind of mix and match who has permission to do what. Now, one of the first places we're going to look when we start looking at this horizontal view of AI costs is we probably want to work in the analysis section and have some graphs to help us. So a really common graph would be, let's look across all of my Azure subscriptions. You could even have this across multiple tenants. So many companies will have a dev tenant, test tenant, or you may have acquired a company and they might have some AI costs. So we can bring all of this cost into Table 360 and we can do this holistic view. Grouping by meter subcategory is a really good way to get a view of what are we spending on the different types of AI. So you can see on the diagram here, I've got some Translator, speech, OpenAI, and so on. So we can start getting a view of what services we're actually using. Now, one of the challenges that we're going to have is when we start looking at these cost graphs, a lot of the people who might be looking at the data might not be experts in AI and might not be experts in Azure. So, maybe a manager or a FinOps person who's not an expert in AI is looking at this, and you want to have something explained to you. What am I actually looking at here? So there's a feature in Table 360 called Explain with AI. And what you would do is you just one click a button and it'll basically take the thing you're looking at and it'll try and explain the key insights within that. So it'll, in this case, the graph I was looking at, it'll tell me what are the key drivers for cost, what's maybe changing over time, and what some of the things I can think about are. So this will help you with things like cost reviews and with, explaining graphs that you might not fully understand. Now, another graph we might look at would be a meter level graph. So here you can see on the screen, I've got a graph that's focusing on a meter, which will help me understand things like token usage. So what I might do is create a filter. So we're only looking at the OpenAI service type, and we'd grouping by meter will effectively tell me how much we're spending on different tokens. So as a good example here, and remember, this graph's looking across all 22 subscriptions that we have in the view of this graph. So you'll see that kind of just here. But one of the real interesting observations is you can see that some of the models that were used were changed. So I think we've changed from a 4.1 to a 5.4 at some point in early June. And you'll see how that costs very much transitioned from one model to the other. Now, in another company, you might have many different teams using different models at the same time. So this will show you which money you're spending on different models as a good example. Now, the next thing we might want to think about is how do we do a cost review for our AI costs? So with Turbo 360, you can do this side-by-side comparison, which you can look at as a graph, but I also really like looking at it as a table as well. So here, for example, you'll see I might have that meter subcategory, and I can see costs in June and May, and I can really easily zone in on what's increased by the most, what's decreased by the most. I can do things like drill down as well, so I might dig into that OpenAI GPT-5 cost, which went up a bit, so I might right-click and start having a look at which resources, which resource groups, which subscriptions. I could also change the group by and focus on different subscriptions that are spending, which ones have gone up and down. So it's really easy to kind of heat zone in to the things that are changing. So you can focus on trying to figure out where do I want to spend my time looking to understand things better. Because one of the big challenges with an Azure environment that's big is you're going to have a lot of data that's noise, and you really want to find the interesting things quickly. And for a cost review, this will really help you do that. A good example, actually, with that review would be make it as simple as possible to do regular reviews that don't take very long to do. That's one of the keys to companies who are successful at managing an efficient Azure environment. Now, the next thing we might do is we might also look at AI cost by team. Now, this could also be things like by department, by environment. And what I would be doing here is grouping by some kind of tag. So I can easily say these are all my costs for, the sales coach or the co-pilot application. And I've just grouped by a specific tag, and I can see how those costs change month over month. Now, you might in my case, this is really helping me have that horizontal view that looks at multiple different vertical views. So if you imagine each of these applications might have a team that micromanages the cost for that app, but as a FinOps practitioner, I can holistically look across all those different apps and get a good view of how much they're spending. Now, One of the things I might do is I might want an inventory of my AI resources that haven't been tagged. So, for example, here I could just create a list of the resources which I can use for an inventory, but I can also just tell me all the ones that don't have a tag on them of this particular name, and that'll help me identify untagged AI costs, which will really help you too. Now, once you're trying to go from zero to hero is a really common thing with Turbo 360. So customers will spend a very short amount of time getting things up and running. Then we go into sort of like maintenance mode where we just want to keep an eye on stuff. And one of the things that you'll probably find really useful is going to be our daily cost pulse. So when you've got that tree view with the holistic view of your AI costs, you're going to be busy. You might not have time to go in every day to see what's going on. So you might just ping a daily email with a little graph like you can see here, and it'll just say, here's what's been changing the last few days, and you can track those costs without having to keep coming back to the tool. So again, really small thing, but a big time saver, keeping you informed of what's happening. Now, another one that I really like would be the budget planner. So here, what we want to do is we want to go from reacting to cost to planning cost. So the blue bars would be how much have I spent each month. The blue squiggly area would be a ranged forecast of where our costs are likely to fall. But the red line is really what we influence. So we can say to Turbo 360, look, my costs the next few months will be X, Y, Z. I might do like a percentage increase if I'm not as sure. And this will help you with that problem that the business people will probably say to the other finance people, what do your costs look like for the next 3 to 6 months? And it's very difficult to plan that. But here we can actually manage our plan, and we can come in every month and just update the next few months as things are changing and make it really easy to keep on top of our plan versus actual. Okay, so we want to go a bit deeper now. So we started off at that high level cross, kind of cross the organization view, looking at where we're spending and what kind of services we're spending on. Now we want to dig a bit deeper. So if I'm the FinOps practitioner and I've identified within this environment what are the resources I need to take a bit more of a look at. So we could start with maybe we've got the AI inventory. So we've got all of our different AI resources as a list. We can click on them and open up more to see a bit more info about what's going on. So some of the things that we can do on top of just looking at cost data, in the FinOps tool, you'll be able to see things like metrics. So you could pick a given metric for a resource type, and you could just query straight away what's been happening with this resource. So I think this one here is a translator, where we've been translating documents between languages, and we can see how many characters have been processed and that kind of thing. So it really lets you dig deeper and focus the lens more on the metrics rather than just the billing data, because the billing data on its own already tells half the story. Now, what we might also do is we might use AI agents to help us here. So in Turbo 360, we've got an army of agents in the product that help you with different use cases. And what you might do is go to the AI agent and say, can you explain what's going on here? So this one might, go and look at the billing data, look at the metrics, look at the costs that are driving, which meter costs and that kind of thing. It'll just explain it to you in easily to understand terms what's actually happening. So some of these agents will help you understand the cost, they'll help you optimize, they'll answer what if analysis type questions. And we hope that this just really saves you a lot of time in doing analysis. And you can just in a couple of clicks get the answers for many of the common questions. Now, once we've had a little bit of a look at our AI spend, we need to think about how we put guardrails in place to help us manage this spend on an ongoing basis. So we don't want to have the scenario where we have something unexpected happens and that results in a big bill. So there's a number of ways we can use Turbo 360 to help us manage cost. So the first one's going to be the group budget. So in that tree node where I've got all of my AI costs together, a very easy thing to do is create a group budget that looks across all of my subscriptions in my Azure environment in one go. And I might see, in my case here, I'm saying, look, I'm spending less than 130 a day on AI across the company. I could have a monthly or a weekly budget as well. So there's a number of different ways you can do this. I think a lot of companies just starting with AI will probably focus more on a daily budget till they really understand it. But I can put that fixed line in the sand and say, look, if you break that line, I need to know about it. So we break the line here. So you'll see that little red bit indicates we've gone over budget. And I could maybe get a service ticket raised in ServiceNow or something in Jira or Teams. There's a number of different ways you can raise tickets, but we'll get an alert to tell us something's going wrong and we need to react to this. In addition to a more fixed budget, we do also have anomaly detection. So here we'll be looking at different parts of your environment and looking for behaviors that indicate resources might be going off the rails. Now, what you might find is your environment, particularly with AI, is going to be constantly changing where different resources are spending different amounts of money. And you might have one resource goes down in cost, another resource goes up in cost, and it doesn't trigger your budget. But here, what we're looking at is what is the things that are indicating a resource is misbehaving. So we'll get an alert that comes out to say, look, this looks like it's not right. But before that comes out, we'll also review it with an AI agent who will do like an analysis to work out if we think it's definitely a genuine anomaly versus a possible false positive. So we'll give you a confidence rating. And then you can then react to that anomaly. And we actually have an agent that will help you do that. So when you identify the resource that's going off the rails, which the anomaly detector would help you do, the cost spike troubleshooter can be triggered for that resource. And you can see on the screen here, we've got a little bit where it said, look, that was the day your spike was, your baseline's relatively consistent the other days. And then we've got some other sort of analysis down here. And you'll get like a page and a half worth of analysis looking at things like the metrics that are driving it and that kind of thing. And in this particular case, I think this anomaly was really more about the application driving more load. So it was actually, kind of, if you imagine the application processes documents at different rates. So some days they might have no documents, other days they might have lots of documents. So really, this just verified in our case that this was a load-driven alert from the application doing more. One of the suggestions that was quite interesting, I think it's off the bottom of the screenshot there, was it was saying you might want to put an approval process in. So in the analysis, it looks for common things developers might do wrong and offers some suggestions. So it was saying actually, if you've got big documents or many documents, you might actually want to just put an approval to make sure you're happy before you automatically submit it. But this troubleshoot has been really handy in the past for us. So we've had things where there's like been retries have triggered a cost spike because documents had failed partway through and automatically resubmitted and that kind of thing. So you can kind of monitor for conditions like that as well. Now, one of the really interesting monitoring use cases in Turbo 360 is around not just the FinOps module, because FinOps really depends on the billing data typically, but we also have the business application module, which is more around the metrics and the log data and other things in Azure. So one of the things that you can do in the business application module, if you want to go closer to real time, instead of just depending on that billing data lag, you can actually just monitor the metrics. And you might do something like, say, every 20 minutes, we might go and check how many tokens we've processed over the last 2 hours. And if it breaks a threshold, we know we're processing tokens way quicker than we usually do. So we might then raise an alert, and you can actually come and step in, and you could get down to minutes rather than being 24 hours behind if you look like things aren't working properly and might be going off the rails. So this could be a really good way to mitigate risk if you feel like you're uncomfortable with AI, and especially depending on the billing data lag. So we've had some customers really like this feature actually. Now, if we want to go beyond metrics and beyond billing data, one of the other opportunities is leveraging logs. So this, just to level set, this does also depend on design patterns that you use for implementing your AI. So a common one would be people build an application where you leverage things like log analytics and app insights, and you might be building agents where you're logging the token usage to app insights. So this is really easy to do with Open Telemetry, App Insights, and the Microsoft Agent Framework is a good example. Or you can do this with API management as well. And Turbo 360 can easily leverage those logs, and you can make those visible to business users and support users in a really nice way. But we can also monitor them at the same time. So here's an example where you might create a grid where you've got the number of tokens being processed by different agents, and you can have users can click and explore more and that kind of thing. But you could also raise an alert. So you could say things like, if we had a particular transaction from my agent that processed more than, say, 20,000 tokens, you might raise an alert, and then you might go and get somebody to review that transaction. So I think you can go much lower as you dig into those logs, which I think will help people as well. So if we start wrapping things up and bringing it together, the key thing for Turbo 360 was that the three modules can work together on your AI estate as part of your bigger Azure environment. So we can use Cost Analyzer to visualize, monitor, and manage our cost, again, both in this horizontal and vertical view. We also have the business application module, which can help you to monitor metrics and monitor the service health. And that can also help you watch for runaway token usage. And then finally, we have the business activity monitoring module, which can really help you look for transactions that maybe using a lot more tokens than you're expecting, and we can get right down to that transaction level, which would really help. So hopefully there's plenty for us to use in Turbo 360 that can help you manage this environment. Now, finally, I think just to reiterate, your Azure spend is going to be really big. For many of our customers, they felt AI spend was a black box, and Turbo 360 helped them give us that confidence and visibility. And it's all about trying to manage your solution in the real world. That's going to be the key thing here, is the challenges you get in the real world. They're not the same for every customer. Some customers will focus more on certain scenarios than others. And hopefully as a platform, we can help you really, kind of get the maximum confidence out of the solutions that you're building. Thank you very much for listening to this session today.